Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Thunder, and this is Case Closed. And Case Closed is Ike Ogiamian and myself. We have a panel show, and it is trending, topical, and an all-star cast. So we will be getting started in just a few. Today's show, questioning power and independence in the post-George Floyd era. The corruption effect of unchecked power is a law irrespective of race. The killing of Tyre Nichols in Memphis shows us that police, which are people, police reform should be deracialized. What are the ways that we can rethink crime and law enforcement that will minimize these kinds of incidents? Better training for police, enabling police to solve problems at the root, holding parents responsible, for example, without using guns, tasers, and vests, changing the modalities of arrest, bail, ticketing, sentencing, quotas, etc., changing certain exploitative practices of police unions in the prison industrial complex. Where do we currently stand on the ongoing struggle between the centralized order of elites versus the forces of decentralization and independence? The mRNA vaccine was overhyped by people with obvious conflict of interest. The CEO of Pfizer made several false claims regarding the efficacy of the vaccine. Bill Gates has recently owned up to the fact that the vaccine does not prevent transmission and is ineffective against viral mutations, a fact that was obvious from our yearly experience with the flu vaccines. What does the appearance of Rollo Tomasi on Dr. Phil say about independent media? This and much more we'll discuss with an all-star panel on Case Closed. Let's go. Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. What's happening, everybody? How are we doing? Oh, wait a minute here. Let me.
What's going on?
Okay.
What's good? What's good?
Yeah, 1 second here. I'm having some trouble with. What is this? Yep, he should be here. Okay, 1 second here.
You hear me well?
I do. Okay, let's put there we go. Waiting for Ike was having some trouble. Let's see here. How's everybody doing?
Not bad, not bad.
Me-
Just out here chilling, you know.
All good. All good.
That's good. Just waiting for. See what happened. Here, I'm gonna turn the countdown back on just to give Ike a little bit more time. Sit tight. We'll be right
Yeah,
back.
sounds good.
All right, I think we have everybody here now. All right.
Got it. How do I
All right.
turn off my camera on this weird app you use, Dr. Thunder? I have to switch to the phone, and before I just had it. I guess I just had the camera covered or something. But I guess I guess this works. This works either way.
All right. I
Hit the
think we're
settings button on the side of the picture.
This, then it gives me choices of cameras. None of them is zero. Like none of them is no camera.
Oh snap!
But all good. I'll just place it down right there. That ought to work. As long as you can hear my audio correctly, right?
yes, we hear you well.
All right, cool. All right, all right, all right. We'll get right into it. Okay. Apologies for all the confusion and whatnot, but let's get right into this. Okay, there are a couple of facts, just to lay down a couple of facts here. Okay. Fact number one: 5 former police officers have been accused of killing 29-year-old Tyre Nichols earlier this month. That's January 2023, right? Uh, They were charged with 7 felonies each, including second-degree murder. Okay, the police said that the beating of Nichols occurred during an arrest on the evening of January 7th. There is a video body cam footage of this when officers pulled him over for reckless driving and then chased him after he ran from them. Nichols died from his injuries in January 10th. Now, the first question I just want to ask is just a quick feel for how do you think, because there was body cam, what do you think was going on with the cops for them to do this with a body cam on, right? So LAR, Man of Tomorrow, just a quick kind of feel of, some of us have seen the body cam footage. What do you think was going on in their minds? LAR, MOT, Kaizo, and then Dr. Thunder.
They were mad that they had to chase him and they wanted to tune him up and went out of control. You know, beating somebody up for a chase is not necessarily police brutality. But going the extra mile to basically beat him to death is. They can't really, hide behind that he was chasing. It's like, nah, y'all, you know, when it comes to situations like that, I mean, being inhumane to us is kind of normal, so nobody looks at it like it's a big deal until somebody actually dies, you know.
Got it. So MOT, they had body cams on, and they went this far. Like, what was going on there?
Uh, all right. MOT, can you hear now? Here, let's give him a little bit more time. Let's go with Kaizo.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they obviously this was. I don't think this is premeditated murder. I think this was something that went out of control, and I do think obviously they sort of orchestrated the situation for whatever reasons that was going on in their mental psyche. I have no idea, but clearly some of them instigated the situation and kind of exacerbated it. And I think they didn't really think it was going to go to the end. So I don't think they intended actually for him to have been deleted from existence. But at the same, that's the only thing I can think that would explain. There's a body cam on and they're still carrying out. And of course, maybe they were drugged up. We don't know what kind of reports that were taken. Were they high on something? Some of them were some of them high, and then obviously because it's a whole group of people that are supposed to have each other's back, they just kind of again keep protecting each other. We have no idea until sort of more information comes out in regards to their mental state. But I think that's some of the reasons why they may have done what they did, despite having like some form of visual and audio of the circumstance.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Uh, Dr. Thunder, and then we'll see if MOT is back. Well, Dr. Thunder, what are your thoughts about the fact that they had body cams and they still just went full? We've kind of seen that. Well, LAR said that basically, hey, we understand when you run from the cops, it's typically a bad idea, right? They don't like that, and no one will like it. If you run away, you make them chase you and all that stuff. They wanted to tune them up a little, but to take it this far, especially with body cams, what do you think was going through their minds? Uh, General thoughts. Again, this is not, it's not facts or diagnosis or anything. It doesn't have any material bearing on anything, but just from your heart.
Yeah, I don't know. It's really strange. We know what the rules are. They're supposed to keep the cameras on. They can get reprimand, they can get fined or whatever for not complying with the with the rules. So you could explain it that way. Another way to explain it is just that they didn't really think that there was anything wrong with what they were doing. They thought that they were in the right. They maybe the stuff started going sideways, but maybe they didn't think that there was anything wrong with what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's speculation. I don't know how reliable this is, but it's been, but I've seen this same sort of speculation several places now, and that is that this guy Tyre was having an affair with one of the cops' wives, and so if that's the case, then basically they saw this cat, they pulled him over for whatever reason they pulled him over for, and it was a foregone conclusion. We already know what was going to go down. If that actually is the case. Now, if that is the case, that still makes it a little strange I don't know. It seems to me like if you know you're about to do some dirt, you might as well turn the cameras off. And then and then whatever happens, and then maybe you get your story straight. But this just seems like, I don't know, man. This is crazy stuff.
Yeah, and obviously we don't have the autopsy report with regards to why, how, or what exactly the complications from the injuries that he died from, because I'm sure tuning people up like this is, it is normal, regular. Not that it is okay, but it is kind of normal. However, if it was a particular hit to the head or something like that, where otherwise, this is a normal thing that they do all the time, but it doesn't lead to this kind of an outcome, then but we don't know. We don't know. Obviously, it wasn't like the case with George Floyd, where there was kneeling for a prolonged period of time, and also with George Floyd, it also came out with that with the fentanyl and all that kind of stuff. So we don't also know the Nichols' state. We don't know why he ran, right? Because from all accounts, seems like a upstanding citizen. Even though now I'm just going out of it. Even though that always seems to be I mean, they always show the picture with the guy in a in a three-piece suit.
I
um,
mean, him
yeah.
running was a prerequisite for what happened. I mean, his spirit knew, you know.
Yeah. I saw. I watched what other folks watched, and when I was looking at this, I was like, I would have ran too, man. I mean,
Mm,
I'm not. I wouldn't have ran from the jump. I probably would have, you know, uh, complied with whatever was going on. They were being rough with him right from the jump. It was totally bogus. But if
mhm,
there was a possibility to comply more, maybe. But once he started getting like, the spray to the face, and random brothers was just running up on him, and getting some licks in and all that kind of stuff, I'd be running too. I mean, because it's
mhm.
like at that point, it's like, dude, it doesn't matter if
Yeah, yeah.
what's right and wrong at that point. It doesn't matter if these are police and you're supposed to do what they're telling you or not. If they're going to kill you, if you think that they're going to kill you, then yeah, you got to. What you supposed to do? You got to get out of there, and man.
Oh,
I'll tell you, man. Man, it's not
mm.
supposed to be like that. And these are brothers, man. These are black cops. This is
Okay.
on a different level.
Since when did that make a difference? That never made a difference, did it?
Well, it did make a difference, but with the sort of aggression against this guy, like the animalistic, like treating him like he's an animal, with that aspect of it, it just, I mean, it's all funky. It doesn't really, that part of it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but it makes it make even less sense, is what I'm saying.
Well, let's stick on that on the racialized aspect of it for a second here. And the question on the table is this: the speed with which the charges were brought to these cops, the speed at which they became former officers, and all these other kinds of things. People are obviously making the comparison between this and the George Floyd case, right? One way to look at it is, well, this is progress. Okay, that if you deracialize it, you just say, well, the cops now know that when they mess up, they got all eyes on them. We have the whole body cam situation, which is a relatively new, a relatively recent addition to police policy as well. One way to look at it is like, okay, this is progress. Well, another way to look at it is, oh, you see, when it was white cops, they took their time. Now, granted, this is also another thing is why it's not a good comparison. I guess I'm showing my hand here is it's not a good comparison from a strictly empirical point of view because this is a different police department, right? Different police department, different area of the country, all these other kinds of things, right? So it's hard to make that comparison unless you have kind of like a nationwide study where you're looking at similar incidents. Ever since George Floyd, we haven't had enough time or enough incidents or enough kind of spread throughout the country. But the question still remains, LAR, what do you think about the fact, is it legitimate to say, hey, since they are brothers, as Dr. Thunder said, they threw the book at him quick. Now the book is not completely thrown at him yet, but charges were brought quick and all this kind of stuff. Or is this just, hey, this is the new normal that we're in now, and there's no need to bring in the racial aspect? What are your thoughts?
Them getting fired and getting locked up and arrested or whatever, that's normal with black cops. That's normal. That's the same thing happened with the African dude that shot the white chick in Minnesota. The same thing happened with the black officers that shot the white dude in a police chase, actually, in Louisiana. When black cops kill people, they get fired and go to jail. That's pretty much normal. When white cops do it, nah, not so much. Or they get short length of time if they get locked up. The brothers aspect, yeah, because honestly, we try to, and I hate to say this, but when it comes to us black people in America, people try to put too much sauce on people's inhumane treatment towards us, even if it's us. It's like it needs to be a perfect situation where Jesus need to come down and say, stop. Now that was wrong. He's smoking, he's drinking, he got cheated on. It don't have to be all that. It don't have to be all that. Honestly, the man got jumped by 5 people. If you ever got jumped before, if somebody tells you to chill, you're probably going to get snuck by somebody else. Just because they're police officers, if you're watching them do this on camera, that's what they do. The issue with it being quote unquote brothers is they know this already. Not only do they know this, I would bet they're old enough to have kids or nephews or brothers who they say, hey, listen, if you're in this situation, do this, and it should work out. And they did the complete opposite that they would tell somebody in their family to do if they came across police in that manner. So in that part, it's like they just took advantage of being able to beat the guy to death. Yeah, it's on camera. It's supposed to be on camera because it's body cams. They don't cut off anymore. If you cut them off, that's gonna send you to jail for premeditated murder because that means you cut it off to cut off the evidence. So if the guy wound up dead, everybody's getting locked up for life.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Sorry you're having trouble with that, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, so it was on the phone. Once I switched to my tablet, it worked. But go ahead. Sorry about that, LAR.
No, go ahead, man, because you got to skip the last round. So I'm done. You do your thing.
Yeah, so MOT.
All right, so what's simple?
Go
ahead.
Yeah. No, I just want to reiterate that the last round is just basically, and you're probably going to respond to it anyways, that basically, given the body cam situation, why would they do this? What's going through their head? And then number 2, this aspect is, comparing this to the treatment of white cops, or granted, we are satisfied with the fact that the charges are brought, but is there something to be said about the fact that, there is if it were white cops, it might have been different. So those 2 questions, go ahead.
All right. So one thing we have to understand that once you start using their power improperly, you're kind of on your own. Like most, the conservative media outlet would normally be out defending cops and defending cops' actions. It doesn't go to you as a black cop. Even when I was a cop, dude, you knew that you couldn't do the same stuff that those other people did. And if you did, you were going to go down for it, and everybody was going to pretend like it never happened before. So, they still have cameras on their cars that still pick up the audio and some of the video as well. I mean, even if they turn their actual cams off, because I'm familiar with that police department, by the way. So even if they were to turn their cameras off, the actual cameras that are on the car is still running, and they still would have picked up all of the actual audio, because that's how that kind of works for DUIs, is that they have you do all this stuff in front of the camera in front of the car. But in this type of situation here, we have to treat these people like trained professionals. And when trained professionals use their training improperly, and there's a bad outcome, they got to go to jail for it. Now, what this does do is it gives all the credence to what we were saying the entire time. I knew something like this was going to happen. where there was going to be a Rodney King style situation with all black cops on scene, and everybody gets it when it's black cops, not white cops, but black cops. So you have to understand that, most of Memphis Police Department is nothing but black cops for the most part. I'm talking about over 95% that I've seen from the police functions that I went to in the city. That mostly that. Now, this started from an illegal stop. They performed a felony traffic stop on somebody that they didn't run the plates of or anything else. If you looked at the interview with George Stephanopoulos and the actual police chief, she even said it herself with the cameras that's set up around the city because they have it timestamped where they can follow the cars that was following him around town and they can see themselves whether there was some reckless driving. They said that there was no reckless driving. So they just targeted this dude, pulled him out of the car, did whatever they did. But now it comes into question, how many times have they done this before? Have they done this before? Really? And it's like, we get the professionalism argument when it's black cops, but when it's another demographic of cops, even if it's Asian, we want to cover up for those people. And yes, they should have been charged. Like if if this person was a civilian and there was a beating that happened and it's actually on tape, what they would actually do is they would charge them initially with aggravated assault, and the moment the person dies, they get murder charges. But most of these investigations to announcing charges take 6 and 8 months. It don't come within a couple of days. That's what's strange to people. But I'm like, that's the process, though. We know what happened. We have the video of what happened. Charge them. That's kind of what we have.
Yeah. Hey, MOT, I wanted to ask you this follow up. Now, I've heard
Kaizo,
this a few times.
What do you?
Here, wait one second, Ike. I've heard this a few times now, and I don't know how reputable this is. This could just be totally just speculation, but I've heard it from multiple locations. Now, especially given that it seems like they were just trying to find some bogus reason to pull this guy over because they didn't have a legitimate reason.
Correct.
What I'm hearing is that this dude was having an affair with one of the cops' wives. And so that's why they chased this dude down. And it's a foregone conclusion what was going to happen. I don't know if I don't know if there's anything to that. I don't know if it's actually true or not. Is that something that you've heard?
I have heard that, but when I was going to do my actual analysis, like next weekend, I was going to leave that out because you have to understand that getting subpoenas from these phone companies are not going to come as quick as the charges. It could take 6 or 8 weeks to get the actual phone logs and records and text messages and all that kind of stuff. So I don't, because they just picked this dude out of random nowhere and did something very specific to this person that they didn't have a reason. So there has to be some underlying reason. That probably is most likely is the reason, but they better hope that that's not part of the reason too. Because if it is, these guys are super. I mean, these guys are going to get life. These guys are going to get life.
Yeah.
And they need to get life and not be sent to the cop ward inside the prisons. They need to go to general population like everybody else. But I have heard that. And if that is the case, then a lot of people are in a lot of trouble, not just these 5 people. Because that means that guy probably had an illegal GPS on his car to find him. Like, this just doesn't stop. If this guy is targeted, there's a way that they found this specific guy. And it ain't because we was just looking for a specific car. They probably put a GPS locator on that dude's car without his knowledge, and that's how they caught up with him and found him, quote unquote. But you're gonna know what the timeline is way later on. But right now it's too early in the investigation. But that's how quickly those things can go that way. So.
Yeah.
I see. Dr. Thunder, or you can hear me, right? Sorry,
Yeah.
I've moved to a bit.
We got you.
Yeah, I moved to a better room now.
African struggle streaming. We got it.
African struggle streaming. Yeah. Yes, indeed. But let's move kind of to the solutions, and we'll take it around and back to MOT. He's the one that's been a cop before and all that kind of stuff. But if we just start out with ways in which we can adjust the training, let's start from that aspect, okay? Because forget the fact that this, if this was, for example, they targeted him because he was was having an affair. There's nothing that could have been done with regards to training on that. Like this is just a bad person. But in general, ways to minimize these kinds of dangerous encounters with the police, with regards to, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, Kaizo. Let's start with Kaizo, Dr. Thunder, LER, and then we'll get back to MOT with regards to the ways that we can make some changes to the way the cops operate in order to minimize this.
Okay, so obviously, the usual stuff, since I'm starting off, is different kinds of training. Um, Make sure that the people come from the similar communities. I'm not too sure if that's the case in this case. I have to do more research. Um, that's obviously there. Also incentivize better, sort of character, quality, self control, all the stuff that I guess you see more in the military that actually have more self control, yet they're handling more deadly weapons, for instance, right? So we have got to incentivize and make sure that these guys are trained to the appropriate ways of actually utilizing force. But however, I also think there's ways that you can sort of instate technology, like for example, in these cases where the body cams have now become, I guess, mandatory in many different states. I don't know if all states have mandatory body cams, and if you have to keep it on, I don't know. I need to do more research on that. But point is, I still think, right, these body cams should not be controlled by them. They shouldn't have the ability to switch it off. Yes, the brother did say that this obviously is going to look more suspicious if you switch it off, especially if something bad goes on, because now that's intent, right? But the point is, I would actually think that now this is more like a superstructure. It's just use blockchain technology again. I'm a great advocate for that. Get the body cam to record the data, send it to a independent, non-police, sort of controlled database that is again on the blockchain, so that again, if anything changes, those guys themselves can't delete these things unless they get access from multiple different other agencies or whatever it is. I don't know. You can create that, but point is, every single body cam is recorded, sent to this space. They can't change it. They can't switch it off. They can't delete it. That way, people know, and you let them know, hey, look. Again, you set examples as well, right? Actually, putting these people through this criminal justice in the appropriate manner. Like in this case, if they charge him with murder, he goes through the full course. I believe that actually, if you give these people sort of that fear that they will get prosecuted with the full extent of the law, and again, all the body cams are recorded in blockchain that they can't delete themselves, I think that's going to actually impact a lot of the culture in the future.
Okay, makes perfect sense. So, Dr. Thunder, we know that the sheriffs, for example, behave better because they're better funded, they're better trained, and also the head honcho has to be elected. And the Kaiser mentioned the military. Of all the different kinds of things with regards to training, better pay, or different kinds of ways within this area, because we're going to get into some more specifics here, because there are things that come also that have to do with arrest versus ticketing, bail, and the certain kinds of discretion that they have. Is there anything that you have heard that you are in favor of, or that you would suggest?
That I would suggest as a method to reduce these kind of incidents?
Correct.
Oh man, you know, the human being thing is that's rough. That's a rough thing. Because when you create freedoms and power structures and instruments that can do a lot of damage, weapons, and whatnot, when you do that, you also, what that means is that people are going to likely do stuff they're not supposed to do with it. They're going to take advantage of folks. They're going to, persecute folks. If they have an issue with somebody, they're going to take advantage. All of that kind of stuff is going to happen. And so, one of the things that people propose is, okay, let's try to figure out the psychology of people. let's see if the people that were putting in certain positions, like police officers, if they have the sort of tendencies to disproportionately take advantage, you know, and it's not like they're not doing background checks, and it's not like they're doing psych evaluations. Perhaps maybe they're not doing as much as they could do. But I would argue that they would have to continue on with that. They need to, because you could be just fine. You take the job, psychologically, you're just fine. There's nothing wrong with you. And then you've been on the job and you've seen a bunch of stuff, and you become a different person, and you go dirty, whatever it is that, and I don't know. So anything short of probably having video cams on these people 100%, like the Truman Show or something. I don't know. I don't know how effective, because I think people can sort of fake it for the test.
Oh, okay. I think that makes sense, and that is still within the training realm, because there are people whom are better kind of scrutinized and better trained for de-escalating, and it's part of their job, and that also the material circumstances surrounding their job, where what are the tools that you're given, what are the things that the tasks that we saddle you with, which we'll get into. But LAR, your general thoughts here with regards to what you would support with regards to the way that the police should be reformed, retrained, such that these kinds of encounters don't happen as much. Because it's not just purely a racial thing, as we can see here in this case.
The solution is actually to do what all the other communities do: destroy their lives personally, whether it be legally or illegally. The system is the system. The training is the training. It's kind, um, when it comes to racially, other racial or ethnic groups can actually hide behind the legal system and the law because they have, carte blanche to do certain things, or the media will spin it a certain way. If we do it, it's completely out of pocket. But once you enter into a realm, if you're in an authority position of doing criminal behavior, then you open yourself up for a criminal response. And I think us as a people, the vast majority of us aren't criminal minded, but it's kind of like having a correctional officer who's dabbling in contraband. Your job gonna get your head, and them guys that you bringing contraband to gonna get your head one way or the other. And sometimes you got to make people unsafe. You don't get to go home to your family and go out to eat and have a steak and have a beer. You're gonna get pulled up on like they do with everybody else. And then you go, I'm an officer. Who cares? See, people forget that even when from my childhood to adulthood, there were certain neighborhoods in America that even cops didn't want to go to because it was a no-go zone. Your badge ain't gonna save you here. And guess what? Those people knew how to act all of a sudden. So sometimes you got to make people pay, man. Like I said, whether legally or illegally, destroy their life legally, put them on blast, sue them for everything they got, sue their family for everything they got, sue the department for everything they got. Go. The boss need to get sued. The janitor need to get sued. Break them. And I promise you, people will act different. Take their pension. Oh, you can't take their pension? Take their life. See, I bet you people go, well, you know what? Because when it comes to other people, one of the issues that people don't want to address is when it comes to other group of people are more respectful because they don't know who they know. I don't want to bust you because I don't know if you might know somebody who's influential, so I'm going to treat you with respect. Hey, well, fine. Make it a situation where you don't know who we know. But,
Gotcha.
that's my thought.
So MOT, I'm gonna ask you a couple questions here. You're the resident expert on this particular topic. Now, the police have qualified immunity from prosecution in cases involving,
In
the
some
quote unquote
states.
normal in some states. Okay. So, do you have any idea how many states that is, and will you be in favor of removing that qualified immunity in order to kind of reduce the kind of corruption that we see?
Well, actually, in Colorado, we've already removed it in our state. We've already removed it in our state. But I think you should take all this stuff out of their hands. There needs to be an actual police punishment commission. There needs to be an international or national force that punishes these people. We've already proven that we cannot trust our criminal justice system or the judiciary or the district attorney to prosecute these people how it's supposed to. You have to understand that police officers do not have whistleblower protection. They do not have that. So it isn't a training issue. It's an application of force against who and what the clientele is. These people knew that they was going to be able to do this to this specific guy and get away with it because nobody really cares about black people in general and whole and specific, and especially when it comes to the police violent aspect. So my fix for this would be the getting rid of police unions. You have to take down the actual pillars that hold these people up. And you have to create a national board that punishes police, like a court martial for the military. 99% conviction rate. You have to have a court martialing system or else a grand jury. Have them testify by themselves without an attorney in front of a grand jury. And I want on that grand jury special forces officers of each of the four branches. If you could convince those individuals that you had to break the law and take a life because you were scared for your life, given that these people deal with death every day, if you could convince those four people of that from all four service branches, then you got yourself a case. It should be as easy as this. Okay, is the person dead? Yes. Okay, is the person still dead? Yes. What are we discussing here? Y'all going to prison forever. Next case. It need to be that concrete inside people's head because we've created an actual system to where there's no punishment. Like this was no more public than Rodney King. And I pretty much think the Rodney King thing was worse, but the dude lived. This guy went through the same thing, but he died. But the punishment needs to be the same. The punishment needs to be the same. And you have to prosecute people who go up and try to protect the police in these type of circumstances. They need to be prosecuted as if they are trying to obstruct justice. You have to put special rules in place. And once you put these rules in place for like 100 or 150 years after you cleaned out this actual issue, things will go right. I'm telling you.
Oh,
Every problem in every
gotcha.
police department is it. All right. All right. So
Yeah,
let me tell you how deep this goes. Go ahead.
uh-huh. I just wanted to kind of make sure that we're getting the enumerations of things here correctly. So qualified immunity, got rid of it in Colorado. You would definitely support that for all of the states. The police unions and the structures that uphold these people, they protect themselves. You get rid of that. Take the prosecution of the police away from their hands. Make it like a court-martial system that with very strict and high standards, just like the military. And there are some other things that you're going to get into, and I'll let you get into that. But I wanted to ask you about the fact that the police has some discretion with regards to whom they take to jail or not. In other words, they could give you a ticket,
Correct.
right? Let's say it's not murder or something like that, right? They could decide to give you a ticket, which is just like a hearing that says, hey, you agree to X. That's why you have to sign it, right? And then you sign it, and then you show up in court. Them taking you to jail most of the time is just an unnecessary thing, but they just want to do it. They just want to take you to jail, fingerprint you, do all that stuff, but it could have been taken care of with a ticket. Would you support that kind of would you take that out of their hands too? That kind of discretion where it's like, hey, unless it's something like this, don't you just give them a ticket and send them on their way. And then you can add whatever else you want to add.
Correct. I would take that away from them because they go to these poor communities. They know these people are cash strapped, and they know how much it enrages a person to be taken to jail for some BS reason. That is an unneeded escalation that don't need to happen. And every single time you take somebody to jail for any type of nonsensical reason that could be easily handled by a ticket, you're putting your life needlessly in danger, but they do it because they get kicks out of vacuuming people off the street, putting them in jail, getting them into this bail system where they have to pay even more money when all this stuff can be solved with one simple court case. But for the problems with the police department, They are at least 20 years old as the oldest person who is in that police department. When you interview for being a police officer, they're trying to make sure that their power is being protected first. They don't really care about what you're doing after that. They want to make sure that their power is being protected, that they're going to give you access to. If you listen to all the questions that are being thrown your way, it really isn't about right or wrong. It's about, do you want to protect this power, and are you going to do what you're told? Most of that do what you're told stuff is about towing the line. And without whistleblower protection, you have nobody to complain to. And that complaint is going to go right to the person, and they're going to know who filed it. And then all of a sudden, you're going to be railroaded out of your department and lose your career. That shouldn't be able to happen. I mean, even in the military, there's an inspector general system that you go through to get investigations started on specific things. The police don't have that.
Got it. Makes sense. I want to shift gears slightly here, but we're going to make one round again around this police thing and end up with MOT. But basically, it seems that Kaiser now, it seems that based on what MOT is saying, okay, we have to break up the handling of our problems. And let's say, for example, the homeless problem is thrown upon the police, right? The problem of a guy shoplifting is thrown upon the police, and then they have the discretion to, in poor neighborhoods, take them to jail, as opposed to, hey, you could just write them a ticket, or you could take them to their parents and have a word with Mr. Smith in the house on the hill, and then they take care of it that way. But it would then also require that the cops are narrow in what they're supposed to do. But you're then going to have all these other agencies, let's say, that deal with other things and de-escalation, blah blah blah. uh, Kaiser, your thoughts with regards to, and you perhaps can look at, talk about the system in the UK and certain other places, how you break up the things that are now mounted on top of the cops in terms of what their responsibilities are, or what we look for the police to solve. Is it, and then when we get to you, Dr. Thurner, I'm going to ask you about, whether you would approve of such a, because this is going to be more government spending, not that that's a bad thing, but is the government itself even, shall we say, can they handle this kind of responsibility? This is probably why they've thrown everything to the cops, because they cannot handle a mental health system and all these other kinds of things. But Kaiser, from your experience outside the United States, how would you envision these social problems being taken care of in a way that it is taken care of in the house on the hill with Mr. Smith, where they talk to the parents and all these other kinds of things? And it seems like people have training and common sense. What are your thoughts on
Yeah, so before I go there, I would like to say that America is unique simply because America has guns, right? So at every single interaction between a police officer and a civilian, there is a threat of violence from both sides. So I think that has to be acknowledged, because obviously in places in like Europe, and let's say UK specifically, the police don't carry guns. Actually, they're not allowed to carry guns. Only special SWAT-like police are allowed to actually carry guns, and that's after they've been called, after they already sort of surveilled the area. There's actual threat, right? So the situation obviously is very, very different. And what that means is, even if, let's say, you train the police better to respond to homelessness, to respond to mental health issues, someone's high on meth, so their behavior is erratic, of course, better training is going to allow them to identify this kind of behavior. But that doesn't remove the threat and fear of violence from both sides, actually. So I think that is really the biggest barrier there. It's the fact that America has a unique gun culture, which at the end of the day, you again, if whether someone is mentally ill or not, in fact, that could even make them more likely, or let's say if they're higher on meth, to actually react in a violent way if they're sort of threatened, again, from both sides, right? So the issue here, I would say, is first, um, the police officers need to focus less on non-violent crimes. For example, the whole Eric Garner thing with the, I don't know, cigarettes or something, that is not a big deal to actually have to bring someone in to a police station, because he's not really violating anything in a violent manner. So I think if they focus more on actually responding, again, obviously better training and identification of mental health issues versus drug issues, and actually treat them more as, let's say, ill people rather than criminals necessarily, I think that will obviously help. But at the end of the day, I think actually just having less of a, we need to catch you or put you away because you're breaking the law. So I think, because if I kind of compare it to an African system, African cops don't really care about whether you're breaking the law or not. They care if you are causing harm. So I think more of a so-called harm principled response, basically, focusing and prioritizing violent sort of offenses or potential
Uh-huh.
offenses. I think that might actually reduce some of these circumstances. Because if you notice, a lot of these unarmed, obviously they are unarmed, right? That's part of the problem. Is that the police feel this need of just complying with the laws and the powers that avail them to that kind of response, as opposed to kind of looking, well, hang on, what's going on here? Is it necessary for me to bring them in? And if so, through a violent way that can cause escalations, or can I give them a ticket, um, make sure that they sign it, and then obviously, or even give them and just record you giving it to them and them actually acknowledging, there's various different ways you don't have to have that direct confrontation, and basically also analyze that relevant to, let's say, because obviously stop and searches sometimes catch things like drugs or other stuff. So make sure it's data driven, like, okay, what's the chances on the area and all that stuff. Just letting them go and then giving them a ticket that they turn up at court, a better response than actually focusing on a non-violent, again, encounter. That's what led you there, and then you just escalate things and
Yeah, yeah,
create these
yeah.
issues.
I like that you bring that, and I want to ask Dr. Thunder something real quick. But I like that you bring this thing up because coming from Africa and noticing that the cops, especially when you get in your car, it's like once you get in a vehicle, it's like the opportunity for them to just dig in. The fact that the cops have to look at insurance, and people say, "Oh, but it's important." But I say, "But should the police, should the guys with guns and vests and tasers be the ones responsible for your tags and your insurance and this and that, and then it could go from, oh, my tax expired to now I'm
No,
dead,
it's not
right?
relevant,
Should
right?
it?
It's like the tax
Yeah,
man coming to your house with a gun. It's a non-equivalent sort
yeah,
of
exactly. It's like the tax, the IRS shows up with weapons drawn and all that kind of stuff. Like you typically don't do that, right? This it's treated differently. Now, Dr.
A
Thunder,
meter maid, a meter maid or something should take care of most of that kind of stuff.
ex- exactly. In
Not
Nigeria, they have
not
traffic
somebody with a
police.
gun. Yeah, not with a freaking
Exactly,
gun.
exactly. So Ronald Reagan had to, after years of abuse in terms of the mental health system, where, you get locked up, perhaps, you know, uh, uh, can they have consent? Can they not have consent? That kind of thing is in question. But there was a lot of abuse going on in these places where people were locked up and, electrocuted and lobotomies and all those kinds of good things. That, in addition to other things, led Ronald Reagan to kind of get rid of that stuff in California. And then it was also gotten rid of, when he was the governor of California, it was also gotten rid of nationally as well. And ever since then, there has not been a real way for us to take care of the of this mental illness problem, because the homeless problem that people talk about, for example, it's not a real homeless problem. It's a untreated problem. People whom are addicted to things and also just mentally ill. That is the issue. And whom gets to deal with this? Okay, we just send the cops there, and then we throw them from one hospital to the next, and then they're back on the streets, this kind of thing. Maybe you get a 5150. Okay, you're not a libertarian candidate, but what would be the libertarian stance with regards to, if you take these things away from the cops, like what are the ways in which we address things such as the kid whom is hungry and decides to go shoplifting or something like that? What kind of social service worker does that? You just mentioned traffic cops taking care of certain aspects of things. Uh, the kid that's going over here doing something, perhaps it's going to be some other agency with some other trained personnel. The mental health institution, what would that look like in terms of what makes sense to you from a libertarian perspective, if there is such a thing, Dr. Thunder, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Yeah. So first of all, everyone, like the video, like, share, comment, subscribe, become a channel member where you'll get access to all archived videos. Support black male media, support independent media. Super chats enabled. Super thanks for the replay gang. And you can also support Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Dr. Thunder Music, all one word. Spell out the word doctor. Interacting with the public when you have to penalize them or or you have to arrest them, you have to give them a ticket, you have to, fine them. All that stuff is going to be, there's going to be a certain amount of danger associated. And one of the reasons that I don't like the usual sort of pro cop sort of argumentation where it's like, well, these cops are around these violent people all the time, and you have to, they're putting themselves in harm's way, and so we need to, have some sort of extra, grace or something when these kinds of things happen. The reason I don't like that is that, well, we knew that, you knew that when you took the job. They knew it when they hired you. They knew it when they put the policies in place. The politicians that politicked for more paroling. I'm sorry, more patrolling certain areas. For certain laws on the books that were going to create more interactions between the cops and and people that had violated that law. Everybody knew all of this stuff. So that's not, I'm not saying that we shouldn't recognize that these people are human. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't like this sort of making excuses, overly making excuses, because what I have seen is not as much in this situation, because this seems to be like way over the top, super egregious. And I think that it wouldn't look good if people tried to too much seem like they're trying to do the pro cop thing in this scenario. But I think it's inherently dangerous to interact with folks, with people. I think the more that you can limit that interaction, perhaps try to police some of this stuff with, dare I say, AI, with cameras, with all kinds of other things that doesn't offer the same sort of human element, which seems to disproportionately end bad. Well, actually, disproportionately, I'm not sure what I'd be comparing it to. So that's all we know, actually. So there is no disproportionate. It just tends to end bad, it seems, when you have these kinds of scenarios. But you had said something earlier, and I find this question a little more interesting about, so if the answer is to have basically a national association to punish these kinds of things, I think MOT called it Police Punishment Commission, then as a libertarian, I don't like the idea of spending money that we don't need to spend. How are we going to pay for that? I still think that would actually be worth it. I think we could just dismantle some other useless stuff that doesn't work. I'd be for anything that limited the scope of people that have a gun and the right to put cuffs on you and take you to jail. I'd be pretty much for that.
Yeah. The system as it is right now is very expensive. It's very expensive when they just take you to jail and all that kind of stuff, incarcerating people, holding people, even if it's just for a couple of. So if we're talking about the money thing, right? If you stop that, there's going to be it's going to be a lot of money to do the right thing with, if you will. And I just want to mention one more thing, and then we'll go into this some other things that have to do with independence. That basically, I believe that police unions use junior officers for some free work, right? Which leads to them, and this is the MOT's point about getting rid of the unions. They overwork the cops, and then the cops show up, which is aside from their regular duties, and then they show up in these over-policed neighborhoods, and they're frustrated, and they go buck wild. So there are many things to be done in that regard. But when it comes to centralization versus decentralization, because decentralization would be also something that I would apply in this case when it comes to all these other kinds of uh, services and personnel and institutions that need to take care of these problems. One could look at it, I mean, after all, it is the American model, right? State by state, municipality by municipality. If you look at this decentralized approach, there will be many different solutions that will arise if you remove this kind of police system with the police unions and all this kind of stuff. So that'd be a way that would be kind of in the spirit of the libertarian, right? But still will work. Then let's go to the let's just call it the jab, okay? Um, I want to ask well before I ask Kaizo, can you just bring us up to speed with regards to the vaccines, right? And these are the vaccines for flu-like, COVID-like, viruses, which has been around with us forever. What are the types? What is the efficacy, especially with regards to the mutation of these viruses, which happens, right? By the way, and for those of you who don't believe in evolution, okay, well, evolution happens right before your eyes every day in the flu season. The flu virus evolves, okay. It's a thing. It actually happens. You can watch it in a petri dish. Things mutate with regards to responding to the environment. But just bring us up to speed with regards to the science of the traditional vaccines, the mutation of the viruses, and then the efficacy, and then this mRNA thing. Kaizo, just if you could, real quick.
Yeah, great question. Great question. So I'll start with how they work, right? And why, let's say, the special, um, how effective they are and everything. As again, according to data, again, the data depends on how you analyze it. So I'll give my best. So the new COVID-19 vaccines, most of them were actually on a new type of technology that's been around, but they kind of sort of perfected large scale human trials, basically in the form of COVID vaccine recently in this pandemic. So the difference is a normal vaccine, of course, functions because you take an attenuated, a changed form of the virus. So let's say you got smallpox, you take either a dead version of smallpox or maybe some kind of weakened version of smallpox. Then you basically inject it in someone's bloodstream, and it activates your white blood cells to build the appropriate antibodies based on the size, shape, and of the antigens, the chemicals that your antibodies can detect on the pathogen, aka the virus. That's a normal vaccine. We've done that for hundreds of years. However, this new mRNA virus, what they do is they take a piece of a genetic information from the virus, and then like mRNA, right? So they inject it into your body, and your body is able to obviously
And the
activate the memory.
M stands for mitochondrial, right? Mitochondria is a part of the cells of us, of all of animals, right? That is a different. It's almost like a cell within a cell, so it has its own genetic information as well. So the M stands for mitochondrial.
Right.
Go ahead.
So what that means is actually when it's injected to your body, it's not going to interfere with your own bodies. So it's only going to last for a short time, and it's not necessarily going to go start interfering with your own cells functioning. So it's not going to change the way your own cells do things. So yeah, so they inject this piece of DNA again from the virus, but this DNA just codes for the antigen. So the in the COVID specific case, it's a spike protein, the antigen that's outside of the COVID virus. Of course, then they inject this into your body starts producing the correct antibodies. So the rest of this, how it functions, is the same as a normal vaccine. The only difference is they're not injecting a dead thing into you or some kind of weakened version of the thing. They're actually injecting the genes of it, and then they're hoping that your body will make the correct antibodies and will have a memory of it for the next time, aka should last longer. You have more immunity for even so-called mutations. Now the issue is it's not that effective. Actually, even after 4 doses, only there's still 44% chance of you actually getting the virus. Now, maybe it's a slightly weakened version of the virus because you already have access to some, because let me go to the next point. So the reason why it's difficult to get flu vaccines that function is because the flu virus, just the way it is, it's always mutating. And there's two main mutations. There's antigenic drift. That's just basically the antigens change a little bit. So it's just think of it like a key, right? It changes enough that you can't open it using the key lock method. Or it could actually be like what happened with the H1N1, the swine flu virus, where basically what happens is a completely different shift from, like, let's say an animal, like a swine flu, to a human. That's basically called an antigenic shift. It completely changes to a point where it's now able to infect a whole new species. So normal flu is just a drift. It changes a little bit, but the issue is because there's a slightly bit change, the key lock method that vaccines function can't do the same thing. So it's only going to be a small little bit effective. So now studies have actually come out showing that even with the fourth dose of COVID vaccines, you're still 44% likely to actually get reinfected. So the reinfection rates are still extremely high. Now, obviously, that's
Okay.
still. Mhm.
Yeah. That's good. So again, mRNA is taking the ghost in the shell. It's like taking the spirit. It's taking the information, not giving you the dead
Right.
stuff, but it's taking the genetic information of the stuff from the mitochondria of the stuff, throwing it in you. But still, it's not very effective. And this is not something that's surprising because every flu season we go through the taking the flu
Yeah.
virus, and we know it doesn't necessarily work and all that kind of stuff. But here's the problem. And that's what I'm going to ask the panel right now. The issue is so Pfizer, the CEO of Pfizer, said some ridiculous things, and we don't expect any guy, him to be saying anything other than that. I mean, he's incentivized to sell crap, right? And he doesn't have any other product to sell with regards to COVID, so he's going to push this one. And he said ridiculous
Mhm.
things like, "Oh, this is very effective, 100% effective," and then they started backing up, and backing up, and backing up, backing up. But let me ask you, LAR, if you're willing to answer, will you take any more boosters of this? In what I'm asking you really is, do you have belief in this virus with regards to its efficacy? And when you weigh it with the other risks that are maybe involved, especially in a situation where you don't have a 50 years of data to test, but you also know that this thing's not going to stop you from getting it, and you know that you're in a particular group that is not at risk of death, let's say. So LAR and then MOT, what is your confidence? Will you take the next booster? Go ahead, LAR.
I took one, actually, the first Pfizer COVID shot because my son was in high school, so I knew they were gonna just spread like wildfire. That was it. I don't even. I've never taken the flu since I was a child. I haven't taken that since I was a child. I caught the flu actually once in my life, and that was last year. So, in my opinion, it's kind of like old country folks who would uh help their immune system by giving themselves a little venom from the snakes outside. After a
Mm-hmm.
certain, like, you just keep doing it. Like, for what? At this point, it's just selling you a product for money's sake. Like, it, most people are going to the same places. If they catch COVID, if you catch COVID and you keep going to the same places and you catch it again, it's where you're going. If you're not eating properly and 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 you're known to get sick, I get it. Like, people who got like cancer patients and people with certain illnesses that weaken their immune system, I get it. But for other people, like, take into consideration, um, I work out like 6 days a week. Since COVID started, I've seen the same people at the gym, and rarely have they been sick. Rarely, you know. So it's like, if you taking care of yourself, you're not gonna even think about it that much. Like, a lot of this stuff is just, and I hate to say this, but the biggest issue with COVID in America is, honestly, we want to be so free. We're rebellious to everything. So we got to go search out. See, I didn't catch it. I went to the party. I didn't catch it. I went to the game. I didn't catch it. It's like, why you keep putting yourself at risk? A lot of this stuff is just our own stupidity of wanting to be free. That's all I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying.
Okay, so you've said it on both sides, like people being stupid and being like, putting themselves at risk, and then you have other people whom are perhaps too much in fear. We know the science. We have, after all, the flu is just another COVID deal, right? And we know that these vaccines are not 100% accurate. We just heard about why it's been about the mutation. mRNA is relatively new. We don't have all the data and all that kind of stuff. So with regards to that, MOT, what's your level of confidence with this stuff? If you're willing to answer, because I know that people have all kinds of reasons why they might not want to answer. right? But your level of confidence with it, and would you take the next set of boosters that keep coming out?
Yes, I will always take the boosters. I took the Pfizer shot. It's the shot that most people in the military takes. It's the shot that the president took, the former one and the current one, and it's the one that has the least amount of side effects over time. I mean, it's risk.
You're breaking up, MOT.
Um, I've seen many people die of this actual issue when they could have lowered the percentage points somewhat by taking the virus. But then again, you know what? I don't want to force it on people. But at the end of the day, if a company or corporation or specific public place don't want to take that risk with you, then they get to put restrictions on you. Now, if you don't go any place, if you stay at home most of the time, I mean, you know, your risk mitigation factors are nearly or at zero, and you can pretty much get by without having it. I want you the option to have it, but I also want the options of companies to not put other people at risk immediately. Like how you get treated in the Veterans Administration when you start coughing is you don't like that treatment because they don't want you coming in there getting everybody sick, and especially when the vaccines are for free for us, you know, for the VA. I mean, I can't speak for other organizations outside the Veteran Administration, but yes, I will continue to take the shots. I will continue to take the boosters until they come up with a better answer and solution.
Okay, clear. Now, Kaizo, I want to modify the question a little bit when it comes to you because MOT brought up this aspect of you harming others. And very few people know this, but washing your hands when you go to the restroom is not about protecting you. It actually is about protecting others. Now it's been so ingrained in us that we just, but really it's about protecting others, especially if you're an employee in some fucking some kind of food handling place, right? And other kinds of things like that. And the logic makes sense, right? Whatever was on you is on you, right? And you go to, you wash your hands when you go touch yourself and stuff like that to protect other people. So, Kaiser, uh, how about this aspect? Okay, I'm sure, and I agree with MOT when it comes to the companies and institutions that you choose to be a part of can say, hey, these are the stipulations, and they're not forcing you per se. We all know how it goes, right? You can always go somewhere else, right? That's the idea. It may feel like they're forcing you, but they have a right to quote unquote protect themselves. What do you think about this? And would you consider doing a shot, a booster for this kind of a principle, the washing your hands to protect other people principle, Kazi?
Right, right. So for me, I never took any shots or anything like that. Reason why is because I looked at the numbers, people from my age group, all the demographics in terms of health were actually, less likely to, suffer mortal consequences than the flu, for example, which is actually the reason why Nigeria was the highest flu death per capita in 2017. Yeah, I'm not going to go there. But the point is, I think actually, if we truly care about like public health, we truly study epidemiology, and we care about actually reducing the negative consequences, especially mortal consequences, on people who are at risk. I think I would apply simple logic here. First, we know that it's not that effective. Yeah, it's still effective to some account in terms of statistics, right? Of course, the statistics are a little bit better. This is like the Pfizer and stuff. The Chinese one is extremely extremely dusty. That thing doesn't work. They've actually had to basically put people back into full lockdown again, right? Like early, like a couple months ago. I don't know if they're still doing it right now. So what I can say here is this, right? If I was someone in charge of public health, I would say everybody who is not within the risk demographics is allowed to go out there and do what they want. Everybody else who is at risk should lock down. For example, I'm talking about like if things get bad, right? So everybody else should go, who is at risk should be locked down. People who are not at risk should be able to go and work. What that allow means is you can actually get higher chance of them getting herd immunity, and actually the virus will spread less once they already had it, healed from it, and the people who are again at most risk, they're protected from it. So I'll kind of do more of that, like allow those who can and are willing to go ahead with their normal jobs, and then those who basically can't, based on any sort of medical or other conditions, they should be the ones locked down. I think that would make more sense for economy. make more sense also for mental health, because a lot of the issues that we didn't discuss here is that actually a lot of people also died from mental health issues, or people went into mental health conditions that they couldn't and still have not recovered from. So in general, I'm more of a libertarian approach here. I say, yeah, those who are at risk, they should be locked down or rather segregated in work offices or at home or whatever it is, and everyone else who basically is either not at the risk population, they should continue to go ahead, because we know the
Okay.
numbers. The studies are everywhere.
Okay, so MOT started out, okay, hey, if you are in a particular demographic or if you are segregating yourself, okay, fine, you do that. You're expanding now because it's not just about the vaccine. We're talking about the lockdown policies and criticizing the lockdown policies, and we're saying that the ways in which the lockdown policies could be taken care of more intelligently. Because this is important because it's one of those things where we all saw the kind of assaults on common sense that kind of happened during the pandemic, okay? So to sweep it under the rug afterwards, it's a little bit intellectually dishonest. So it's good to kind of just open up and say, okay, what are the things that we did wrong? What are the things that can be corrected? Here's what the vaccine actually is. Here's what it does. Here's the reason why it's not very effective. Nothing special. It's just like the flu shot, right? And so on. So in addition to what you said, Kaiser, because you're also in Africa where the demographic is such that I believe like the average age is like 14 years old or some crap like that, where people are really young,
Yeah, so
these things
it's
also have
not
to be taken in.
influential
Yeah,
here.
yeah, it's a different kind of a thing there. So, Dr. Thunder, you probably were, in the Ohio State University there. They make you take the shots, right? And you do have to keep on taking boosters. But let me ask you, and then would you, would you take more boosters? What's your level of confidence with this? Have you taken the vaccine?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I took I did the Johnson and Johnson, one and
Well,
done.
you took the cheap one.
Yeah, I did one and done, and then there's been no uh, forced compliance or anything to take any boosters. There's been encouragement, but no forced compliance. I've never, uh, I mean, I've not had it. I've not had you know, the cough, and um, and I've had no reason to think that I've had it. I've had no symptoms. Um, I mean, it's possible that I was an asymptomatic case and didn't get it that for that reason. I also have not been a fan of flu shots, of the flu vaccine. I got the flu maybe once or twice when I was a kid. I've not had the flu since I was in my early 20s. I'm 48. So, that's just, now, if people want to take it, they can take it. That's fine. My issue with the whole thing has not really been if people should take it or not. If people should have the right to take it or should have access to it, or rather to take it. My issue is this sort of all of the bending, twisting people's arms, and now it's been found to be unconstitutional. Of course, it was all along to take away a person's ability to provide for themselves and their family because they won't, bend the knee. If they have reasons to believe that putting something foreign into their body is just not something they want to do, they should be able to do that within reason. They should be able to do that. I think what Kaizo said, I think, is that's basically the plan that they used in, I want to say it was like in the Netherlands or something, or in the Scandinavian countries. They basically just said, look, we're going to take elderly people and people that have, a pre-existing sort of condition that would make them have a cold morbidity. We're going to set them up so that they don't have to interact with other people. And then other people, you can continue to work, you can continue to do what you need to do, and they didn't sustain the sort of massive damage to their economy because of it. in another thing that we have to factor into this whole thing is that, look, you have to factor poverty into this whole thing. So the numbers basically I think it's per 100,000. It's something like per 1% percentage point. It's equal? It's either 10,000. I don't remember where the zero goes. It's either 10,000 or 100,000 deaths associated with poverty. So people dying that would not have died if the economy was better. So if you're talking 100,000, I think it's 100,000. If you say 10%, 10% more unemployment rate, that equals, I mean, you can do the math. That's 1 million, right? So we have to also take a look at this. But what they were saying prior was anybody that was even asking that question they were the problem. They were being demonized, X, Y, and Z. Now you have Bill Gates and others who have now sold their interest in the jab. Now they're speaking more openly. They're speaking more openly about their belief that it's ineffective, that these jabs have been largely ineffective. Yeah, and it's a sales thing. So if you have stock, if you're Pfizer, if you're the CEO of Pfizer, then your primary job is as a salesman, right? You gotta you gotta tell people all of the great things about this product that you have. And if you call that out, if you just say, look, can't we at least look over there just to see if there's anything valid about this? It's the whole sort of compelled, forced. We're going to make you bend the knee. We're not going to let you talk about it. If you talk about it, we're going to risk X, Y, and Z. I mean, I've lost gigs because I didn't have a booster. I mean, I had the jab. I did all the other stuff that I was supposed to do. I wore a mask when they tell me to wear a mask. Though we know that all the studies, the parts about the studies that they weren't reading to us before, that they weren't reporting before, is that at least for a year and a half, 2 years now, wearing a mask, kids wearing masks at schools has been a net zero because they've done the research that shows that when you in schools where there's no masking mandates and no 6 feet separation, none of that, the social what is the thing that they would call? Yeah, social distancing, none of that stuff was there. No plexiglass like that. And this is, of course, to be fair, this is once about 70 to 75% of the population had been vaccinated. So I do recognize that may be a factor in this. There was zero difference between them and then the ones that they were mask, double mask, social distancing, plexiglass, limited number of students in class, all like this. It was a net zero. So we've known that for a long time, but we still told people that they have to comply with these ridiculous rules. And then when they ask basic questions about it, and then of course what's going to happen. And as more of this information comes out, that we know that a lot of the questions that were being asked were legitimate questions, the powers that be are never going to say, you know what, we were wrong, we're sorry about this. Of course they can't, because their only thing that they can do is double down. They can't appear to be weak. They can't appear to have actually been wrong. So then they'll just lie to you more in another way. So that whole thing is it's kind of it's sort of a sore point with me. And because I know a lot of artists, musicians in the pandemic was absolutely devastating. A lot of clubs and stuff that closed, jazz clubs that closed forever because of this thing, because of the goofy way that we dealt with this. A lot of people were really hurt, especially people in service industries. Were super hurt and will never recover fully because of this. And people are just going to act like it's okay. And hey, but we had to do what was best. We didn't know what was happening. Yeah, but you didn't allow all of the information to be considered. So anyhow, that's my
So shout out to me for the super chat. And yeah, by the way, Dr. Thunder, I figured out the internet thing. And I knew this whole time. It's just the room that I'm in, that I have my computers and everything set up, is the worst room for the Wi-Fi. But I think I'll start doing it in this other some other areas of the house, blah blah blah. But neither here nor there. The best thing that could come out from this kind of thing is in terms of the vaccine, and it's not really even about the vaccine. It's more about people recognizing the fact that groupthink is a real thing, and it doesn't matter what you do, right? It doesn't matter whether you take the jab, don't take the jab, or consider your employment, don't consider your blah blah, all that kind of stuff. It's the fact that people were saying things like, "Oh, you can't ask this question," and then 2 months later, that question became the official line, right? Oh, Wuhan, what do you mean the Wuhan lab? That's wrong. You can't say Wuhan lab. And then
That's
now it's like, oh yeah, it
racist.
probably
It's
came from the lab.
racist.
All that kind of stuff. The Kong flu, and shout out to. Anyways, real quick here. Let's because we're right there on time.
Yeah, I
but
do.
let me.
I hope we can mention a quite significant
to.
event. Yeah, go ahead.
But if
So-
I have a comment. Oh, go ahead.
Well, make a quick comment then.
Yeah, see, as a scientist, I think obviously what transpired, it's great. It's great for research because now we have a world level research on how effective new strategies of, you know, vaccines are, right? Because obviously mRNA vaccines were not used at this extent, so there was not much data on how effective they are or strategies to make them more effective. So actually, I think this is great for the biotechnology future.
100%. Because the worst thing that could happen also from this type of thing is that people just then become Alex Jones, right? So there is a balance here, right? There is one is like, hey, you notice the fact that this kind of crazy group thing happens and people just say ridiculous stuff and the Overton window keeps shifting. But it doesn't mean that you should then just go into full conspiracy. I don't believe in science. They want to control us and
Right.
chemtrails and all
Yeah,
that kind
I
of
don't get
stuff.
those people.
That'll
They're insane.
that'll
It's like,
be
oh,
that'll be a tragedy. Yeah, yeah. So, but cool. So, uh, Mr. Rollo Tomasi, right, uh, showed up on Dr. Phil's show apparently. Now, he said for a long time that he wasn't going to do that, from what I recall, because I think he was asked to do this. And the way he was presented there was the godfather of the manosphere. Okay. That's what he was called. And that's not his doing, it's Dr. Phil. And they want to put somebody out there and say, hey, look at this guy with his hat and his long hair. He's the godfather of the manosphere. And these weirdos on Reddit and pickup artists and whatever, what's going on with them, right? That kind of a thing. But it does say something about, and this is the question, as to A, what does it say about independent media, and B, what do you think about quote unquote manosphere being represented? Dr. Phil's not national news or anything like that, but manosphere being represented either by him or by anybody else. I don't know if you watched him or how you think he did or what was said. I thought it was rather innocuous as to the fact that it wasn't crazy because they later on had a panel of different people and they talked. But starting with LAR, what are your thoughts about this? Comment on the independent media aspect of it. What does this mean? Is it in terms of decentralization and all that kind of stuff? And in that vein, does it matter then if this decentralization is happening and YouTube channels are getting more views? Some YouTube channels are getting more views than Fox News. Okay, then does it really matter that you go to Fox News, right? And then presenting somebody as the godfather of the manosphere. Just your thoughts about that. Let's go around the horn here real quick. Starting with Eliot.
Independent media was going to happen regardless because really the conglomerates became incompetent. So and you saw that for years. The newspaper sales started going down. They started closing because people weren't believing the news stories because it was too much BS going along with it. So when people were given perspectives that were better than the news on these same news things, it was over with. And it's a good thing because uh, journalism has been compromised. So it's I hate to say it this way, you don't need to be truthful or talented to be a journalist anymore. You just have to say whatever you want. So guess what everybody else is doing? I can say whatever I want to. So that's what happened. As far as the Rollo Tomasi thing, it's good that a person like Rollo Tomasi is put out in the public in a sense because there's a lot of people who are not in the manosphere that are like aside from it or adjacent to it who are really trying to make a living off of it. So you might as well have somebody in it who's actually, been in it, make a living off of it. Because now the manosphere has become something that people just say to get views even though they're not involved in it. You get what I'm saying? Oh, this is my manosphere talking point. When have you ever been in? Well, this week because the views is up. So, it's good for a person like Rollo. But we know there's a bunch of people who are opportunists with the space. So it's kind of going through the same thing that you said the media was going to do. Hey man, since this stuff is popping, all I got to do is say the same thing he said on my channel, and I'm gonna get the same result. So I'm glad at least that happened in that way. So that's all.
All right. MOT, Rollo Tomasi. I think, well, yeah, LAR, what you say that makes sense. At least he has a couple of books out which are actually readable and make sense. Now, he's no Jordan Peterson, but that'll just be throwing shade at him. But the thing is, his books are well researched at a certain level, right? At a certain level, and they make sense. And he is well spoken. He's not some crazy person out there. And he is a manosphere person. That's what he has been doing the whole time. But MOT, what do you have to say about this?
I knew about the actual interview. I didn't watch it. My actual manosphere who does have a channel, who don't shy away from it, who isn't trying to clout chase off of it. I would trust that he probably did pretty well because he's pretty well researched. I don't like what he does most of the time, but that's neither here nor there. But it's better that he gets the interview than just putting on somebody who just came here, who knows what's going on, just make a public spectacle of themselves. Go up there and you have to understand that Dr. Phil is an entertainment show of an unlicensed therapist who does stuff for entertainment. Now, if he was by a round table of actual clinical psychologists and psychiatrists, that would have been great, but I don't think that they would have gave the manosphere that type of footing. They still want to probably look at this as some type of a fringe still. So until we start going to the actually psychology today sort of aspect and talking to the actual professionals,
Oh, now you're borging real bad.
Yeah, you're breaking up pretty good. Couldn't hear that last bit that you said.
But let me just rephrase from what I gather is first of all, agreeing with
the custody
LAR that
disputes that could
yes,
break up families and all this other stuff. Like nobody is with the actual policies that turn these things into this. Like nobody is fighting for that, but people just want to be seen somewhere for their own benefit. Okay, I guess that's great, but we still got problems we got to solve here.
Okay. So towards the end there, you're talking about the actual work of like okay, policies, child custody, perhaps, where the rubber meets the road, right? Things that have to be done in order to change the material effects, the laws, and change the money that goes where the money goes and where the money doesn't go, those kinds of things, right? That those things have to be done, and those things will not be done on the Dr. Phil show for sure. And that the Dr. Phil show, yes, it is about an entertainment, and as I mentioned earlier, you want to bring this guy out and say, hey, look at this, and show the ham and eggers, right? Let's show the ham and eggers a weirdo, right? Oh, look at this weirdo over here. It's one of these weird guys that he's leading. He's the godfather of these weirdos in the internet, that kind of a thing, right? But it's not uh, a panel of serious psychologists, let's say, going through the issues and whatnot. But still, shout out to Rolo, the best person to have been put out there, not a cloud chaser, but somebody who has been in this thing for the longest and kept on doing this. Uh, Mizzo, what are your thoughts about Rolo Tomasi showing up on the Dr. Phil show?
I mean, this is great for his sort of potential audience retention from a whole new market. So obviously, I think that's a good thing for him and his sort of brand. However, I know the kinds of people that do watch Dr. Phil. I know some high IQ yet sort of more Matrix like people. You know, people that are sort of bought into the Matrix. It's not just entertainment. They actually kind of again, it just reminds me of that whole Truman Show feeling. That's the kind of people there, right? Us people over here in this space, we're a little bit more aware. We dislike each other sometimes. We have beef, but generally we can kind of see when the wool is being, fleeced over our faces. But I guess the same circumstances, he might be able to wake up a few people. He might be able to kind of make a few people think twice to go dig deeper into the rabbit hole. And I think that's always a good thing. So ultimately, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's great. I mean, someone like Jordan Peterson was able to do great, actually. Got over 6 million or so. Is it 4 to 6 million followers on YouTube now, just because he sort of went more in the mainstream and then pulled a few people. And of course, there's some people who sort of just like him for him and not really kind of seeing the full picture. But yeah, I think generally this is a good thing. Some people are going to wake up and kind of, maybe even save their lives.
Wake up, possibly save their lives. Jordan Peterson being drawn here as a parallel, even though the Psychology Association in Canada, I believe, wanted to bring him back for retraining. This is someone whom perhaps
Yeah,
could
but
be argued to be the most.
that's more so for his recent involvement in the whole trans stuff, which he really shouldn't have been doing a lot of videos about. But yeah.
Yeah. He does kind of get stuck on certain things, and then people then use that as an opportunity to take him to re-education camp or something. But okay, very well put, very well put. And then Dr. Thunder, you could take us out with your thoughts on this and also close the show. But I just want to kind of reiterate what we've talked about. Okay, 5 former police officers, okay, from Memphis, have been charged with several felonies, including murder, right, of Mr. Tyree. And we talked about how ridiculous it is. We talked about some very substantive things with regards to the reform of the police, breaking up the unions, and there's some of the bad practices that they have because these are institutions that have been around for a long time and they're kind of rotten. After all, we're not talking about a capitalist let me not use the word capitalist because that triggers some people. But we're not talking about a market system whereby, oh, there's a lot of competition and or like a democratic situation where, oh, the sheriff, for example, that has to be voted in and voted out, where there's responsiveness, is my point. The police departments don't have to be responsive. They only have to protect themselves. And they have this union that protects themselves. They utilize officers in a way that doesn't make sense. There's discretion, for example, given to officers with regards to whether or not they're going to arrest you. You should take away that discretion away from their hands for things that are non-serious. They should just be giving you a ticket. You sign the ticket, and this is where you show up at court. Okay, that arrest thing, taking you to jail, and then put in a bail situation, and you pay money, and then you're ruining your life. Your car gets impounded. You can't get the car out of the thing. Some of us have been through that, right? I've been through that a couple of times in college and whatnot, right? Like, your car gets impounded. A couple of now you can't pay the impound thing, blah blah blah. All this because of tags. And to that point about tags, it's like, well, should the cops be the ones that are taking care of these things that are, simple have to do with simple regulations like registering your car and things of that nature, right? Should they be the ones taking care of that? The ways of, and then very importantly, making sure that there is a separate entity that punishes the police with a very high standard, similar to the military, because we mentioned training, but another thing that keeps the military in line is that they have very high standards. You can get thrown in jail for adultery or some stuff like that, right? In the military, right? Um, so these are the things that we discussed, and then we moved on to the fact that what the mRNA is to kind of clear the table here as to what this thing is. It's always been like the flu vaccine, okay? And when somebody comes out and tells you, oh, super duper effective, some people always knew, like I always knew what it was, right? And it was all the information was always out there, but there are people who were kind of led around with fear and not making rational decisions. Hey, if you got to do it for your job or you got to make decisions for yourself, that's fine, but don't just buy into some kind of silly thing and politicize it overly. And here we are talking about Rollo Tomasi, closing out, talking about Rollo Tomasi at the Dr. Phil show. Dr. Thunder, what are your thoughts about Rollo, and then you can close us out.
Yeah, congratulations to Rollo. I thought he represented well. I thought he did a very fine job, not getting sort of pigeonholed. He was smart enough to know how to position his responses so that they didn't come across as being defensive. I thought he made very good points. Dr. Phil really didn't have anything to push back against what Rollo was saying. Now, when they opened it up for a panel, there was one person on the panel that started jumping in with a bunch of stuff, which I thought was completely and totally disingenuous. Rollo was very measured. I'm sure he was. I'm sure that he was at least a little bit nervous. I think only an idiot or somebody that had some sort of mental issue would not be at least a little bit nervous under that circumstance, with the way a lot of these kinds of shows go, to basically try to set a certain kind of person to be set, to set them up to look like a fool or an idiot, to stack the panel against him, to stack the questions in a way that are not fair. There was a little bit of that, but they couldn't really make any of it stick. But on the panel, there was one person in particular that thought this was their opportunity to say a bunch of stuff that out the side of their neck. One of which was is to characterize one of Rollo's responses as being an angry sneer, which is a total mischaracterization of his response. He wanted to be able to get that in there because that's one of the usual characterizations and biases against people in the quote unquote manosphere, is that they're just a bunch of angry, venting guys that don't have any nuance, misogynists and all like this. One of the other people had a comment. He was an author, and his whole thing was, well, if we're going to have this gender war or whatever, let's have positivity for men, but not at the expense of women. And the thing is that nothing that Rollo said had anything to do with marginalizing women at all. It all had to do with providing a particular context for the discussion. I mean, he provided a little bit of a ground floor so that it could be understood what was talked about, and then he focused on the issues that men face. But what they do now is whenever you say something that seems to be pro-man, that is their grounds to jump in and to suggest that you're trying to marginalize women for the sake of men, when that's not what's happening at all. Actually, what we're trying to do is we are citing that the way that the stuff is set up has marginalized men, and we're just trying to figure out how to navigate in this new world, with the new situation. So anyhow, so there's a couple things like that happened, but I thought it was a really, really great representation. Shout out to him for that. And as a shameless plug, of course, I interviewed Rollo on my Conversations with Dr. Thunder series on about 8 months ago, and
You got the link on this video down here. Put it in the description.
Oh yeah. I'll put the link in the description. But I also just put it on my community tab. I took it out of the members only area and I put it back in the, at least, public for everybody to see, at least for maybe a week or something like that. And I'll put it back in the members area after that. But and that was a really good conversation. We actually started the conversation out by talking about a bunch of music stuff, which was really interesting. He's a really good guitar player, and so that's good. But let me say this. So that's to provide some context, and I encourage everyone to actually go and watch that. I thought it was really good. It was on CBS, on Dr. Phil, CBS, whatever. So you should be able to figure that out. But I thought it was well done. There's going to be a second part. There's going to be another show, second part of the show, eventually. But I think it is interesting, not just interesting, I think it's telling that a figure like Rollo would be featured on a show like a Dr. Phil. I think what it shows is that independent media is winning. They have to invite people that have significant followings in independent media to seem to remain relevant, right? So I think that is I think that's an actual thing that's going on here. It's very, very, very interesting times that we're in. I think that what's going to continue to happen as this message continues to mainstream, and then with the passport bros and everything and all that stuff that's generating a certain kind of buzz, we know that there are going to be those that are going to pot shot and that are going to try to represent the messaging in a negative way. We know that that's the case. And the reason that they do that is because if the passport bros, or if certain talking points from the manosphere and stuff, if those start to become if they start to proliferate unchecked a little bit too much, then they actually have a great potential of really changing certain dynamics. Now, I'd argue changing certain dynamics for the better, but whoever has the power currently is probably not totally interested in just giving the power up without a pushback. So you can expect there to be a lot of pushback associated with manosphere personalities, with red pill personalities, with passport bros and all that kind of stuff. You can expect a whole lot of pushback. Nothing changes for the better without a lot of resistance. So, anyhow.
Indeed. Before you take, I just want to comment real quick on something that you mentioned there with when you say men, then they say, hey, this is a way of marginalizing. And this is a modern phenomenon, right? Because the spheres of men and women were always kind of clearly demarcated and separated in the past, let's say, or in other, shall we say, more traditional societies, or societies that respect division of labor, societies that respect hierarchy and things like that, always had that separation. So it seems to me that when you try to do this kind of overly democratic, overly open, where openness becomes a prejudice as opposed to something that you think about and do because it's the most pragmatic, practical, or best way of getting to a result. When you say, hey, let's all of us, men and women, talk about our issues together, I'm not sure it's actually possible. I don't think it makes any sense. I this does not provide a path forward, obviously, because the path forward will be to say, hey, things have to be broken down and then reconstituted in such a way where there is the division of labor and the hierarchy reestablished, if you will. But I don't think that you can get to a place where men are talking about their issues in front of women, and then the women sit down there and listen. And it's like, in traditional societies, these things are separate. Men go do their own thing, women go do their own thing, men talk to other men, and so on and so forth. But anyways, good show, isn't that right, Dr. Tony?
Absolutely. Good show, everybody. And thanks for that generous super chat, Ike. And yeah, so of course we'll be back next week. We'll be on Ike's channel for another riveting episode of Case Closed. And that's our time. Peace.